In this video, I'm going to explain why having branding that looks good doesn't mean you actually have a brand. Now, over the last couple of weeks or so, I've been doing my usual prospecting calls, and for whatever reason, more recently, I've came across the same kind of question with a couple of clients where we'll be about 2 minutes into the call and they have told me a little bit about their business, and straight away they jump into, so what are your initial thoughts on how this is going to look? And I try not to just answer that, obviously, and give an initial visual bias. I try to explain that any sort of creative idea without context is just guesswork, and real creative thinking has to solve some sort of problem. And if you're not solving any sort of problems, then you're just chucking stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. And this isn't something to do with talent or experience. You know, I see some really good visual designers, particularly in my little sphere, my LinkedIn bubble. I follow some people who are absolutely incredible. They put out really, really nice polished work. And obviously people have their own styles and tastes, but I keep seeing the same people put work out, and it's so obvious to me that they haven't done any creative direction behind their branding. It kind of looks all same, and it doesn't really say anything. It just looks clean and looks polished. And to be honest, to me, just feels really soulless. And don't get me wrong, they will hand that over to their client, and their client will see that this super clean and polished end visual product and think the work is really good because it looks great. You know, aesthetically, it's very pleasing, but that just isn't really enough anymore. And if you come to me and say, what initial ideas do you have? I really will try to not answer that question up front without doing a bigger, deeper discovery. So what questions do we need to ask up front that can drive the creative direction for us to make informed decisions on something that actually displays that in a visual way, rather than just having something that looks pretty? Now, I'm going to do a deep dive video on the full questions and process that I use, so I won't go into that right now. But some high level questions are, you know, what does the business actually do and who does it do that for? And what does the competitive landscape look like? What are people within that landscape doing that is working? What are others doing that isn't working? And why isn't that working? And what kind of value are you offering that nobody else does, or at least they don't communicate very well? Another good thing to do is to, rather than just ask these kind of broad questions, is hone in on something specific and ask it in an or sort of phrase. So instead of saying, who do you want to appeal to? And their reply being something along the lines of, well, whoever needs whatever their service is. Ask them the or question, which is, how do you want to be positioned? Follow that with, do you want to be seen as a challenger, or do you want to be seen as premium? Do you want to look established and trusted, or do you want to look like the new disruptive thing? Then once you understand all of them things, you have something true to make decisions with. And that's what creative direction is. It's the why behind everything. It's the strategy. It's your positioning. It's the feeling behind the whole brand ecosystem. Then you follow with your art direction, which is essentially the toolkit that you use to portray that visually. Those are things such as your typography, your color palettes, from photography angles to how you color grade photographs, and just how you execute the general aesthetic of the brand across all touch points and medias. And these are all the things that will holistically make up a brand versus something that just looks clean and polished. It's something that's completely intentional versus not. A good example of this is the world of SaaS products and the state that it's in nowadays, where things just move so fast and brands jump on the next trend as opposed to really creating something that people want to get behind. Don't get me wrong, a lot of the time the product itself is the thing that the brand piggybacks off, not the other way around, which in an ideal world, you're going to have something where they will support one another. So if you opened a tab, for example, and you opened up Stripe, you opened up Loom, you opened up Monday.com, you opened up Zoom, and you hid all their logos and redacted some of the text, you'd have a hard time telling them apart which one's which, because they all just have this look about them where it's this kind of purple or blue gradients. They've got this friendly, sleek sans serif fonts. And the issue with that is it's not saying anything specific to anyone specific. They've literally just had a brief which goes, make us look like a credible tech company. And that's exactly what they've got. Yes, they look credible, but are they memorable? Not really. That's not really a true brand. It is just a costume for their category. And that's typically what happens when you just do the what before you do the why. On the flip side of that, if we go back and look at someone who did it really well about 10 years ago when Monzo first came onto the scene, and there was just a sea of really, really outdated, clunky banking apps, you know, in this kind of blue and grey style. And Monzo came along and they released this hot coral card, which was completely new to their category. But what they did, they focused on their ICP and said, we're not trying to appeal to everybody else that these traditional banks do. We're trying to look at the younger generation and appeal to them and their values. They are more in tune and more tech and digitally savvy. They're used to products that actually work rather than these clunky, outdated apps. And you can see that in the way that Monzo really, really honed in on their branding, and from, you know, their colors to the UI, the tone of voice, even the way they spoke about money, everything was built around that purpose in their ICP. And it was just so intentful that they were doing that. And that's a huge, huge part to their success that is the bank nowadays. Every design decision that they've made has a clear understanding of that position. You felt the difference before you even really knew what specific things they had to offer. And that's why doing the creative direction stuff beforehand makes the art direction just feel inevitable. So what do brands actually miss out on when they skip the why? They'll end up with something that probably looks okay and probably converts okay too. But obviously okay isn't great. Then they're going to end up needing to do a rebrand every 2 to 3 years or so. And that cycle just repeats itself, because if you just keep attacking the what and following the next big trend without understanding the why, then you're just going to continuously attract the same type of clients, potentially the clients you don't want, or even just not enough clients in general. And the reason for that is you're just not saying anything specific to anyone specific. And that's what I do try to keep coming back to in these initial meetings when people ask me, you know, what is my initial idea on what this is going to look like? It's not that they don't care for creative direction. It's that they don't truly understand that it exists, or at least to some level understand what it is or what it means. Never mind that it's actually the most important part of the entire branding process. So if there's only one thing that you should take away from this video today, before you do anything to do with what your brand is going to look like, you should really get obsessive about what it is that you want to stand for, who it is that you want to attract, and how you want your brand to make them people feel. If you want to see exactly what my full discovery process looks like, from the questions that I ask to the thoughts behind them and the feedback loops that I include into that, then give me a follow, because I'm going to do a full breakdown in my next video. So I'll see you there.